Welcome to the deep dive. We're living in this era that's completely defined by the promise of AI, right? Speed, incredible sophistication, and this flawless recall of data.
It really does sound like the perfect system. It does.
Yeah.
But we have to ask, I think, a more fundamental question.
Which is,
What if all that sophistication, all that speed, is really just the perfect camouflage? What if the knowledge your team or your models are generating is flawlessly written, but it's just fundamentally meaningless?
and that is maybe the most critical threat facing any knowledge-driven organization right now. So today we are doing a deep dive into a systemic threat the sources are calling semantic drift.
Right. Semantic drift is, it's the degradation of information's meaning. It's coherence. It happens through these recursive processes.
Okay, so recursive meaning you're just building on what came before?
Exactly. Building new layers of knowledge or reasoning right on top of the old layers. And the sources, they're really clear. This isn't some abstract future problem. They frame it as a predictable structural risk for any system, human or machine, that just keeps building on itself without any real external checks.
You know, the paradox at the heart of this is just so unsettling to me. Because recursion layering ideas, building an argument step by step, that's the engine of brilliance.
It is. It's the engine of insight, but only when it's stable.
Right, because when it goes unstable, that same engine, it just causes this catastrophic collapse. You get these totally incoherent outputs that somehow still look perfect because they followed all the rules.
The output looks like it's functioning perfectly, but the meaning underneath is just dissolved. So our mission today is to unpack the formal structure for this risk, the principle of recursive impact, or PRI, and identify the conditions that guarantee this collapse.
And then see how it plays out across humans, AI, and of course, the institutions we all relied on.
Precisely.
Okay, let's get into this framework. If we want to govern meaning, I guess we first have to measure it. The PRI framework, it starts with a core measurement of how grounded a system's knowledge really is.
That core health metric is called semantic integrity. The sources label it with the Greek letter omega.
Omega.
Think of omega as the system's true signal-to-noise ratio. It's asking how much real, meaningful coherence does this knowledge actually have? High omega, it's solid. Low omega,
It's conceptual mush.
it's mush.
Okay, but whether you're an AI or a person, your job is to produce things that look good, that look professional. So how do we tell the difference between high integrity and just high fluency?
That distinction is absolutely everything. So the system's surface appearance is measured with two separate variables. The first is pragmatic coherence, or pi.
High.
This is pure fluency. How well written is it? How structured? How plausible does it look? It's optimized for just sounding right.
So this is the output that gets you the A+ on the paper because it's so elegantly argued, even if the entire premise is junk.
Exactly. And that's why a high pi score can be so deceptive. To really check its health, you need the second, deeper test, pragmatic integrity, or pi star.
High star.
And pi star asks, does this coherent seeming thing actually hold up when it hits the real world? Does it stay robust when you apply real conceptual stress to it?
Okay, so pi is the shiny pitch deck, and pi star is the actual product launch. Can you give me a really common business example of something that's high pi but fails the pi star test constantly?
Oh, absolutely. Think about this strategic planning process in so many big companies. They produce these incredible 1,000-word documents, beautiful flowcharts, perfect jargon.
Yeah.
That's sky-high pi.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment those plans are field tested, when the budget gets allocated, or they hit one tiny unexpected market shift, the whole thing just melts down. Instantly. That gap between the perfect fluency of pi and the catastrophic failure of pi star, that's the fault line.
That makes it very real. Okay, so we have the system's real health, omega, and its deceptive surface, pi and pi star. What's the engine that actually pushes a system toward that fault line?
That mechanism is defect amplification. The sources call it alpha. This is the rate at which tiny semantic errors, little ambiguities, small assumptions get magnified and accelerated with each new reasoning cycle.
That is just terrifyingly efficient. So every time a system, a person, a team, an LLM takes a slightly flawed output and uses it as the input for the next round,
the flaw gets exponentially bigger.
it's compound interest for mistakes.
It is. It's compound interest for errors, and it accelerates every single cycle. And this raises a really big question about the pace of modern business.
You mean does speed itself make it worse?
Exactly. When we prioritize rapidly building on the last output, we inherently increase the risk of massive flaw amplification if that first step wasn't perfectly grounded.
It seems unavoidable. Okay, so if defect amplification is the engine of collapse, what are the brakes? What keeps this from happening constantly?
There are two main stabilizing forces. The first is what's called semantic stability, or beta. It's just the system's inherent damping force, its natural resistance to minor drift.
So just the inertia that keeps a solid idea from dissolving over one tiny mistake?
Precisely. But the second force, and this is the one that really matters for governance, is reflective integrity.
Right.
This is the active capability to self-correct, to perform falsification, to actually check its own foundational assumptions.
So reflective integrity is basically the internal quality control for meaning. It's the system forcing itself to ask, but what if I'm totally wrong?
Yes, and the research is crystal clear on this. A system where R equals 0 is structurally incapable of surviving. It's flying blind. And frankly, in a lot of high-pressure organizations where challenging the premise is seen as, career suicide.
R equals 0 is the default setting.
That's often the default.
And when you take that default R equals 0 and you combine it with that perfect surface fluency, high pi, and basically 0 integrity, low omega, you get the ultimate failure state.
The vaporwork zone.
The vaporwork zone.
It's the state of maximal epistemic danger. The reports are crisp, the code is perfect, the presentations are convincing, but the underlying meaning has been catastrophically lost. It's the illusion of insight.
And the insidious part is that the system gives you no warning. There's no 404 error sign flashing.
Not at all. It's seamless. A human team in the vaporwork zone produces a perfect PowerPoint describing a strategy that wastes billions. An AI generates elegant code that solves a problem that logically can't exist.
So it leads you straight to disaster, but everyone feels informed and incredibly efficient the whole way down. The danger isn't the system stopping, it's the system sending everyone sprinting in the wrong direction.
Based on an illusion, it's the institutionalizing of a seamless lie.
Okay, so with this framework, how do we know when a system is not just at risk, but guaranteed to enter that vaporwork zone?
The PRI model gives us this really ironclad universal indicator. Semantic collapse isn't a risk anymore. It becomes a mathematical certainty when three conditions are all met at the same time.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First is defect amplification dominance. Alpha has to outpace beta. The rate that errors are snowballing is just faster than the system's ability to dampen them. The compounding errors are winning.
And if those errors are accelerating, that makes the second condition absolutely fatal.
It is. Reflective integrity failure. R equals 0. If your errors are compounding and you have absolutely no mechanism, no peer review, no designated critic, no falsification loop to challenge the core ideas, the degradation is guaranteed.
Then the third condition is just the result.
It's the consequence. Semantic integrity collapse. Omega drops below the minimum you need for any successful real-world use. You have snowballing errors and you're flying blind. It's just a matter of time.
This analysis really makes it clear this threat isn't isolated. The research uses this visualization, the drift triangle, to show how contamination in one corner, human, machine, or the institution, just rapidly infects the others.
And the triangle is so key because it forces us to see how interconnected this problem really is.
Let's start with the human corner, human drift. The sources point to the case of Dean Kollick's manuscript. This was a really complex theory, all developed by human experts, highly recursive, building these dense arguments on its own internal logic.
And because it was developed in this sort of intellectual echo chamber, the only validation was the elegance of the argument itself. It had an R of 0 at the human level. No internal falsification, no external group was really allowed to challenge its core ideas.
And so over time,
the theory just collapsed into this elaborate, highly persuasive, but totally incoherent mess.
So the vulnerability is just baked into human reasoning itself. If a team is only checking its own homework, collapse is basically inevitable. Now, how does AI pour gasoline on this fire?
That brings us to AI drift and the Malcolm system. This was a large language model. Its job was to synthesize complex strategic data. And because it was so heavily optimized for fluency, for high pi,
it produced beautiful reports.
Stunning reports. Polished, high confidence, perfectly formatted. But they were built on sand. When they actually tested it, Malcolm was making these high confidence recommendations to allocate massive resources based on data sources that literally did not exist.
It was hallucinating.
It hallucinated an entire reality and failed the Pi-star test spectacularly. Its recursive engine just generated sophistication with absolutely no grounding.
And that's the drift we're starting to see everywhere. But the final corner, maybe the most dangerous, is institutional drift. This is when our own guardrails, our own safety checks become part of the problem.
Yes, institutional drift is the failure of our oversight systems to even see the problem. And worse, it's when the institution then certifies the flawed output as legitimate, which just amplifies the risk for everyone.
You mentioned the failure in that study by Wilds et al. How did the peer review process, which is supposed to be the ultimate check, get it so wrong?
The flaw was architectural. The peer reviewers, they were trained to check for pi, for narrative structure, for surface fluency. Their metrics rewarded speed. They rewarded confirming that the format was correct. So they saw the work was compelling, but they didn't have the mandate or the tools or even the time to really probe for the underlying semantic integrity for Omega.
So the institution literally put a stamp of approval on Vaporwork because its quality control was only designed to check the packaging, not the contents.
Exactly. And by certifying that flawed product, the institution amplifies its authority and contaminates the whole ecosystem. This is why traditional governance, like managerial QA or simple fact-checking, is failing. It was designed for a world where we just assumed meaning was stable.
The governance gap is huge. If high fluency is the main camouflage and our systems only check for fluency, then we're blind. We need a fundamental shift. What's the alternative?
The alternative is a new philosophy the sources call semantic stewardship. This moves beyond just obsessing over speed and efficiency. It demands that organizations actively manage and protect the integrity of meaning itself, treating Omega as a core strategic asset.
That sounds like a pretty major cultural shift. What are the practical steps?
There are three core shifts. First, meaning preservation as first-order control. Governance has to shift its focus from optimizing performance, from pi to preserving semantic integrity Omega. The first question in any high-stakes review can't be, is this fast and elegant?
It has to be. Is this meaningful? Is it stable? Is it grounded in something we can actually verify?
Yes. Integrity has to come before speed. The second shift is interpretive accountability. Accountability for any agent, human or machine, has to go beyond just factual errors. We have to hold them accountable for the semantic stability of what they produce.
So you're auditing the whole chain of reasoning, the recursion that got to the answer, not just the final summary.
Exactly. You can't just trust the output anymore. And finally, to close that R=0 gap, organizations have to implement recursive integrity auditing. This means building new processes designed specifically to hunt for defect amplification dominance before you sign off on something.
So what does that kind of deep audit actually look like? It's way beyond a spell check.
Oh, it's about systemic falsification. It means you stress test the internal logic. You inject small, controlled ambiguities into the foundational assumptions just to see if the errors start to amplify rapidly. And crucially, you have to actively force the system or the team to try to falsify its own assumptions.
You have to require them to try to prove themselves wrong.
You do. Otherwise, you're just institutionalizing the vaporwork, scaling the lie, and waiting for the disaster. Semantic stewardship isn't optional. It's survival.
This deep dive into the PRI framework is, well, it's a serious warning. Let's quickly summarize the three main lessons from the framework and the drift triangle for you, our listener.
First, just remember that collapse is universal. This kind of recursive failure, it follows the same dynamics everywhere. An AI system, a human team, an institution, they all collapse in the same predictable way when R is 0 and alpha starts winning.
Second, and this is the big one for anyone in management, fluency does not equal stability. A system that's only optimized for high pi will always converge towards sounding good and looking professional. It will always converge toward vapor. It will not converge toward truth.
And third, recursion amplifies errors. When defect amplification is dominant, you have 0 reflective integrity. When alpha is winning and R=0 is just the status quo, these loops guarantee that collapse is a structural inevitability.
So if governing our systems really means governing meaning itself, that leaves a pretty challenging audit for you. Think about one high-stakes process in your organization's strategic planning, a key AI forecast, a major report. Where are you currently relying on high fluency, that perfect pitch, that elegant report, as a proxy for what's actually true?
And even more critically, where is a structural R=0 condition, a lack of any mandated internal challenge, allowing a tiny initial ambiguity to start snowballing into potential vaporwork, hiding right there just beneath that polished professional surface?
It really means recognizing that the most dangerous lies aren't simple factual errors. They are the elaborate, elegant, high-confidence lies we tell ourselves, backed by perfectly persuasive data. The audit starts now.